Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Casey, this is Casey Undercovers, and today we are gonna do my February wrap-up and my March TBR. I only read 3 books in February. I got sick again. I've had the flu twice in the last 3 months, and things are just not going well, because when I'm not sick, I'm trying to make up for lost work, and then I'm working all the time, and I don't get to read very much. I hope this year finds balance, because this is not good for my reading goals and for the things I'd rather be doing. But with all that said, let's go ahead and move into the 3 books I read this month. In the month of February, I read Lady Chatterley's Lover by D.H. Lawrence, Dorothy and the Wizard in Oz by L. Frank Baum. This is the 4th book in the Oz series. And The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. I believe this is the 1st book in the Cerulean series, if I'm not mistaken that's what it's called. But those are the 3 books I read in February. It's not a lot, but I did enjoy them for the most part, so let's break this down. Spoiler warning for any and all of these books. I try not to spoil the books too much when I do reviews, but it can be difficult. So if you want to go into a book blind, I do have my videos chaptered for you, so if there is a book you don't want to know anything about, then just skip ahead to the next one. The first book that I read in February was a rollover from January. It was my Buzzwordathon Coverathon pick for Patterns, which was the January prompt. And this was a little bit of redemption for me. This was on my TBR in 2023 for February, and I got COVID and ended up in the hospital and didn't get any books read that month. But this February, I got my book read. And overall, I really enjoyed this book. I give it 3.5 stars. This is a banned book from 1928. When it came out, it was incredibly controversial because of the intimate talk about sex in this book was considered incredibly explicit at the time. Although I feel it is a very honest conversation about sex, partners, and relationships, it is nowhere near as spicy as the books we read now, for sure. But I really did enjoy it. This story was also very unexpected. It was not at all what I thought I was getting into. I knew this book was a spicy banned book from, the 1920s. I did not know that it was going to be something of a philosophical essay on classism, relationships, how men relate to women and women relate to men, and how they need different things from one another and how they react differently to the opposite sex. I didn't expect it to be an honest conversation about sex and bodies. I did not see any of that coming. This book was packed, I'm telling you, packed with thought. It was so beautifully written. I tabbed this book, and I think I had like 30 or 40 tabs in it. Everything was just amazing. This was not at all what I expected it to be, and that was for the best. And I can hear you asking, if it was so great, why is it only 3.5 stars and not a 5-star? Part of that is that it was difficult to read. Mellors speaks with a Derbyshire accent, and it is difficult to read. There were times where I had to listen to the audiobook just to get through reading the Derbyshire accent. And then also because it wasn't as much character driven as I wanted it to be, it was as much more of an essay than I thought it was going to be. So that's why it's not quite a 5-star. So in Lady Chatterley's Lover, our main character Connie has gotten married to her husband, whose name is Clifford, and during World War I, at the time known as the Great War, he becomes a paraplegic. He is paralyzed from the waist down and thus no longer able to have an intimate relation with his wife. And through their living on a manor, and it's called Ragby. It does quite a bit remind me of Manderley from Rebecca. But in their time at Ragby, Connie is not healthy. She is lonely. She is isolated. She is sad. The life is leaving her, and she starts to heal a little bit through going out and exploring the grounds and the forest and the animals that live on the property. And there she meets the gardener who is taking care of their pheasants. And she starts going to see them every day. and through that she starts to get a little bit of life back into her. Now this gardener's name is Oliver Mellors. He's often just referred to as Mellors here. And he and Connie begin a romantic relationship. She has been given the blessing from her husband to have an affair with a man of her class so that they can have a child and so that Clifford can have an heir. But he never wants to know about the affair. He doesn't want to know who the man is. And obviously Mellors, the gardener, the gamekeeper, the groundskeeper, is not at all who he had in mind, but this is who Connie chooses to have a relationship with. And their relationship is just everything you would want. Just the intimacy, the acknowledgement and acceptance of one another, the care enough to have disagreements, like all of those things are in there. But if you're just simply looking for a book that's a spicy book and you just want the steamy, sexual, spicy relationship, I would recommend actually watching the movie that's on Netflix and not reading the book, because the book is so much more heavy criticism on and discussions about classism, sexism, how people relate to one another and that kind of thing, as to where the movie is just mostly just the romance. So depending on what experience you want out of this story, I would either recommend the book or the movie, or in my case, I did the movie after the book, which is the correct order in which to do that. I will tell you though that there is some content warning in here. Not only is it spicy and with, some explicit scenes, there's also a lot of racism, classism, sexism, and anti-Semitism in this book. So just keep that in mind. If any of those things you avoid, then this book is not for you. The second book I read in February was Dorothy and the Wizard in Oz by L. Frank Baum. This is the fourth book in the Oz series. This is a classic fantasy adventure children's story, and this is definitely my least favorite book in the series so far. I gave this book 2 stars and really had to struggle to finish it. I was not having a good time. Now, this book was a prompt from my library card game from the winter edition. I have the volumed set of 5 books of all of the Oz books, and the second volume is purple, and that was the prompt, was a classic with a purple cover. The more I think about this book, the less I remember about this book. And when I look at my reading journal, I have like 4 sentences written in total. I did not think anything of this book, apparently. I wrote down the most boring Oz book yet. And Dorothy in Ozland, but lame, like Dorothy in Wonderland. It had a little bit of an Alice in Wonderland feel to it, but also just no, this one is a skip and not good. It's what I wrote down. It took 140 pages of a 200-page book to actually get to Oz, and by the time we got to Oz, I just really didn't care. She does go on adventures with her friends, and you always get a new cast of characters going to these lands and meeting the people, and that's pretty much what these books are, but I just didn't care about any of these lands, and I didn't care about any of the new characters. The wizard from the first book does come back in his hot air balloon, and he's got like 9 little piglets, which are kind of cute. And then Dorothy has her cat named Eureka with her, but it's not Toto, so even though it's a cat, I didn't really love it. It's kind of like a spoiled little kitten, and it's always complaining that it's hungry, and I wish Dorothy would feed her damn cat, because it was just driving me crazy. And it takes a while to get to the point, but ultimately, Eureka the kitten is put on trial for the murder of a piglet. The Wizard of Oz has gifted one of the piglets to Ozma, and it goes missing, and Eureka is blamed for the murder of this piglet because this whole time along these travels, she's been asking to eat a piglet. And that's kind of the plot that comes, but does it though? Because it's only a small portion of the book, and the rest of the book kind of had no point. You can tell that L. Frank Baum was just writing this because people were asking for more Oz books, that he didn't really want to write this, and it was not good. Only 2 stars. Don't recommend this one. The first 3 books in the series were much stronger. The previous book, Ozma and Oz, was way better. And yeah, I would say don't read this one. The third and final book I read in February was The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. This is the first book in the Cerulean Chronicles, I think it's called. I think earlier I called it series, but I think it's actually Chronicles. And this is a magical realism book, and it was my choice for the Buzzwordathon, both the word portion and the cover portion. The word was water words, and the cover challenge was a skyline. So this fit both of those prompts beautifully. Now, I've had this book sitting on my shelf for 2 years, and I am kicking myself for not reading it sooner, because you guys, we have found a 5-star. This was my first true 5-star book of the year. We Were Liars was only 4.5 stars, but this was my first true 5-star book. In The House in the Cerulean Sea, we follow a man named Linus who has a typical, white-collar, paper pusher, caseworker kind of job, though he does work for the department in charge of magical youth. He is a caseworker, and he goes and visits orphanages to make sure that the children that have been placed there are being well taken care of. These are not ordinary children, they are magical youth. They have abilities. And he is assigned by extremely upper management within the department in charge of magical youth to go and visit a heavily classified orphanage. The world at large does know magical youth exist and that people with magical abilities exist. There is propaganda all over about see something, say something, and reporting these people who have these abilities to the government so that they can be registered and monitored. And at the orphanage that Linus is sent to investigate, there are several children there, 6 children exactly, who have magical abilities or have appearances that have been determined to be too dangerous to mix in with other magical people or other people in society that are incredibly isolated out on this island. And I loved everything about this book. I don't even really care for children in the real world, but these kids in this book were so adorable and so endearing. I loved them. I didn't love the main character and his ordinariness, and didn't love the proprietor of the orphanage as much. I really just read this book because how charming the children are, and they really are. And the adventures they go on are really sweet, and how they overcome the oppression of the people around them and the suspicion of the people around them is really endearing. I just truly enjoyed everything about this book. And if you haven't read it, I absolutely would recommend it. This book is going to be on a recommendation list, short that I make soon, for the found family trope. It's got a great found family trope going on. And if you never thought you'd root for the Antichrist, well, I'll tell you now, you were wrong. It'll be no contest and no surprise that my best and the worst of February were going to be The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune, and the worst was definitely Dorothy and the Wizard in Oz by L. Frank Baum. This should have been obvious. And right in the middle of that is Lady Chatterley's Lover. So everything was pretty well balanced this month for what I was able to read. Moving on to March's TBR, we find chaos. I am way behind on my reading. My library card game TBR is exploding long. I am definitely not going to win this round, but I am still going to give it a try. This is the first month in a few months that I have no rollovers. I have a clean break from February, and at the end of March, Kim has a new game coming out on her channel, Expedition Through Pages. There is a quest game coming out at the end of the month that I will definitely be participating in. So there's a lot of exciting things to look forward to in March, even if it's about to crush me. Starting with the Buzzwordathon and Coverathon challenge from Kayla from Books and Lala, the March prompt for the buzzword is the word thing, and the cover challenge is books. So a title with the word thing in it and a cover with a book on it. And I do have a book that fits both of these prompts. So I will be reading The Book of Lost Things by John Connolly, and as you can see there, I don't know if you can see it very well, but the boy on the cover is holding a book and it has things in the title, so this works perfectly. I will be prioritizing this in March. Moving on to my library card TBR game. This is where we find chaos. Library card is the TBR game I play here on my channel seasonally. And I usually end up with about 15 books per every 3 months, which in the past has been no problem, but recently I just haven't had as much time to read. And so I have so many books still to read before this round is over, and there's no way I'm gonna win, but we're gonna try anyway. And here are all the books I still have to read by the end of March. For my late fine for not completing my TBR for the previous fall edition of Library Card, I had to do a late fine punishment, and that was to add the next book in a series to my TBR, and I chose Blood and Gold by Anne Rice. This is the 8th book in the Vampire Chronicles series. The second book I have from Library Card was a reference desk prompt, and that is when I pull something from my TBR pouch. You know, you have a TBR jar, I have a TBR pouch, and I pulled This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Mohtar and Max Gladstone. The third book is a historical fiction with a black cover, and I chose Circe by Madeline Miller. Another historical fiction with a new-to-me author, I chose The Mad Women's Ball by Victoria Maas. For a mystery that has a number in the title, I chose The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. I mentioned this one earlier, but for a classic that has a purple cover, I am reading Oz Volume 2 from my volumed set of the Wizard of Oz books, and I still have 2 more books within this volume. Each volume has 3 books. The 2 books are The Road to Oz and The Emerald City of Oz. Those are books 5 and 6 by L. Frank Baum in the Oz series. The next prompt is a series with an island setting, and for this I'm reading Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. I am reading this one now, so I should finish this book by the end of March. I am about a third of the way through now, and I'm really enjoying it, so this one at least I know I'll get done. The next one is a romance with a weapon on the cover. I kind of bent this one a little bit and went with a romantasy book, and that is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. This is the first book in the Throne of Glass series. My next prompt is a dystopian and a debut novel. For this, I selected The Doloriad by Missouri Williams. Oh yes, there are still more. For a dystopian, again, with a green cover, I chose Thunderhead by Neal Shusterman. This is the second book in the Arc of the Scythe series. For a series pick that was published between 1990 and 2010, I picked Club Dead by Charlaine Harris. This is the third book in the Sookie Stackhouse books, or the Southern Vampire Mystery series, the True Blood books, whatever you like to call them. And the final book on this list, thankfully it does have an end, is a nonfiction pick with a gold cover, and for this I am reading Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt. Yes, that was a lot of books. That is 11 books alone from my library card game, and then 1 more for the Buzzwordathon. So that's 12 books total. I've never read 12 books in 1 month. I don't think it's going to happen now, but I am going to continue trying to finish this TBR, at least read some of these books from this TBR, because I am still really looking forward to quite a few of these. And I thought about it. I thought about just starting my next round of library card early and just saying, forget it, I'm never going to finish this anyway. But I do still really want to read some of these books, so I'm going to still try at least, and then I'll do my spring round of TBR, library card TBR in April. So there's that. Also, like I mentioned earlier, the Quest game that Kim's got coming out, I'm definitely participating in that. So I can't wait to be up to my own. I forgot to count the Oz book. No, that's 13, 14 books. Oh my god, I'm so never going to finish this. Anyway, I cannot wait to bury myself even worse when I'm playing not only my TBR game, but also Kim's. So that's going to be lots of fun. And the Buzzwordathon challenge, I just like to be in over my head. Who doesn't? So that was tons of fun. Thank you for joining me to lose my mind. I didn't realize how bad it was until just now. Thank you for joining me. I hope to see you in the next video. Like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment below. Tell me which of these books I should be prioritizing. What are the best? What are the worst? I've definitely seen some of these being on worst list, some of these being on best list. So tell me what I should be prioritizing out of this stack. Hope to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.